Saw dudes, Dante Unbound just released, and with it came two new Incarnon weapons, the Onos and Ruvox. Today I'll cover the Onos, a secondary wrist-mounted launcher that turns into a laser arm cannon in Incarnon form. Right off the bat, I'll tell you that this weapon is bugged with a few Warframe abilities and some Incarnon perks in a negative way. That being said, less yapping and more build crafting. Let's get started. Onos can be acquired from the Sanctum Anatomica, with the blueprint being purchasable from Lloyd for 360 vessel capillaries. It can also be dropped from Rotation B from the Disruption node Armatus on Deimos, but it only has a 5% drop chance. It requires 20,000 credits, 3,000 salvage, 400 Necrocoil, and 2 Argon crystals and 6 Entrati Lanthorns to craft. Keep in mind you need to complete the Deadlock Protocol and Whispers in the Wall quests to get the blueprint through farming, but if you're like me and just want to get straight into it, you can buy it from the market for 180 platinum. The stats for this gun are pretty great all around. The primary fire shoots projectiles at 1.4 rounds per second and has a magazine size of 20. It has a reload speed of 2 seconds, which is fairly slow. Onos deals 220 puncture damage with each shot of the primary fire and completely lacks slash and impact damage. This will somewhat hinder gun CO scaling, but not to a large degree. This mode has a base crit chance of 26% and a great crit multiplier of 2.4 times. The status chance sits at a decent 22%. Alright, now let's cover the Incarnon mode, which has two fire modes. I know it's confusing. As usual, Incarnon mode can be accessed by landing headshots and pressing Alt Fire to convert the charge into ammunition. While charging up for the laser attack, a widespread beam is released, which deals 30 radiation damage per hit and fires at 2 rounds per second. It has a crit chance of 14% and a multiplier of 1.6 times. It has a status chance of 18%. Think of this attack as a primer, since the damage pales in comparison to the main attack. The big beam at the end of the charge up deals a ridiculous 2200 direct heat damage and 1100 AoE heat damage. The shot has a crit chance of 38%, a crit multiplier of 3.2 times, and a status chance of 22%. The AoE portion of the damage has a range of 3 meters and a 70% fall off. The direct hit of the beam has a forced heat proc. Alright, so now let's cover the Incarnon perks and my suggestions. We will skip the first perk since it just grants us access to the Incarnon mode. Evolution 2 gives us access to some quality of life perks, with the choice between Marksman's Hand, Rapid Wraith, and Swift Deliverance. The best choice by far is Rapid Wraith since Onos suffers from poor fire rate. If you have a fire rate buff, then you can consider Swift Deliverance, although it is a subpar option. Evolution 3 gives us the choice between Extended Volley, Rapid Reinforcement, and Hunter's Rearmament. Extra mag capacity is worthless since the main attraction is the Incarnon mode, so we'll skip out on Extended Volley. Hunter's Rearmament is pretty negligible in the grand scheme of things. Rapid Reinforcement is the best choice for general gameplay since it reduces reload time and increases the speed of the Incarnon transformation. Evo 4 is where stuff picks up. The choices are between Lethal Lance for 2.5 meters of punch through for 20 seconds on a kill, Incarnon Efficiency for 50% more Incarnon charge per headshot, and Elemental Excess, which grants 20% status chance, but reduces crit chance by 10%. If you plan to use the gun's base form more often, Lethal Lance is a decent perk. For those looking to abuse the arm cannon form, use Incarnon Efficiency. Using Elemental Excess shafts crit chance, which is vital for the Incarnon form and base form, so it's not worth using. Finally, we have Evo 5, which truly defines how the gun will be used. First, we have Sequential Skullbuster, which increases headshot damage by 30% per stack on headshot, which stacks up to 4 times. Stacks do not have a timer, but will be completely wiped upon missing a headshot. This is currently bugged though, and only benefits the base form of the gun. If this gets fixed, then this will be a great perk if you have CC to abuse. Next, we have Impaler's Ferocity, which grants 10% damage for 10 seconds on a punch through hit, which stacks up to 10 times. This perk is meant to be used with Lethal Lance in the base form. This does work with the Incarnon laser since it has infinite body punch through, but there are better options. This perk acts like an additive bonus, such as Hornet Strike, and is not multiplicative, which I think is a bug because it is severely underwhelming in its current state. The last option is Devastation Cascade, which causes hits with a widespread beam to increase crit chance and crit damage of the fully charged laser by 5%, which can stack up to 50 times for a maximum of 250% for both stats. This perk is great, but does require setup, and should be used with loadouts that have strong grouping abilities. The best examples are Airburst, Ensnare, and Larva. Ensnare is probably the best for allowing headshots. The bonus stats act like mods, so think of Pistol Gambit and Target Cracker. This is currently the best option if you plan to use the Incarnon mode a lot. As you can probably tell already, Onos was shipped with quite a few bugs and does not live up to the normal expectations of Incarnon weapons. That being said, those issues will likely be ironed out soon. The perks I prefer to use for general use are Rapid Wraith, Rapid Reinforcement, Incarnon Efficiency, and Devastation Cascade. Because the Onos requires Whispers in the Walls to be complete, I will not be recommending a beginner build. By this point, all the mods needed for the build should be acquired. The main build focused on pimping out the Incarnon mode as much as possible. The Incarnon perks I recommend using are Rapid Wraith, Rapid Reinforcement, Incarnon Efficiency, and Devastation Cascade. Should the buffs later change these choices, I will release another video. Arcane options are somewhat flexible. The best options are between Secondary Merciless and Cascadia Flare. All gameplay shown uses Cascadia Flare since it does not require kills and is very user-friendly. Additionally, it is easy enough to proc given our mod choice and status chance and forced heat application. The Exilus slot is left empty since the builds are insanely expensive. Exilus mods are totally up to you since none of them benefit damage and only affect quality of life. We have Galvanized Diffusion and Galvanized Shot taking up our first 2 slots. Multi-shot is standard, but Gun CO might have some people asking questions. The big laser has an AoE portion, but the bulk of the damage is from the main beam. Although Gun CO is somewhat devalued because of this, it still is a good choice. If you have another damage buff source, this can be swapped for Galvanized Crosshairs, though that may prove inconsistent. Next, we have our crit chance and crit damage mods, Prime Pistol Gambit and Target Cracker. These are essential. The Incarnon laser reaches 109% crit chance and has a 6.7 crit multiplier for great damage. Creeping Bullseye is not used because it does not allow us to reach another crit breakpoint and reduces our fire rate, thus lowering DPS. Next is Lethal Torrent. This introduces more base multi-shot and fire rate. Fire rate is incredibly important since a laser attack takes a long time to fire. Then we have our 3 elemental mods, Pistol Pestilence, Jolt, and Prime Heated Charge. This set of mods create corrosive and heat damage. This is perfect to use against armor. However, if you just want more raw damage, you could invest more Forma and swap out Jolt for Prime Convulsion. This will shift the damage to be more corrosive weighted and reduce our status chance just a tad. However, since the main laser has forced heat procs, this doesn't matter too much. With this setup, you are incentivized to follow through with every charge of the laser, since deactivation will wipe all stacks of the crit buff provided by Devastation Cascade. Even in its current, weaker state, the Onos has no problem blowing through base steel path and often feels like overkill. I know that some are referring to the Kamehameha attack as weak at the moment, and I can't help but agree a little bit. However, it can be attributed to the bugged interactions for the perks in Evolution 5, which is likely to be fixed very soon. Now let's talk about external buffs that we can use to our advantage. First up, let's cover Warframe Arcanes. The best options seem to be Arcane Precision and Velocity. Precision increases our secondary damage by 300% on a headshot for 18 seconds, but cannot be refreshed. This will greatly help the current iteration of the Onos in endurance missions, but may not be necessary when the bugs are fixed. The more consistent option is likely Arcane Velocity, which has a 90% chance on a critical hit to grant a 120% fire rate bonus to our pistols for 9 seconds. The effect can refresh while it is active. Since Onos has a high crit chance, this is an extremely viable option that eliminates the biggest pain point of the Incarnon mode. Use this if you have a free Arcane slot. Last but not least, let's talk about the abilities that will send this gun from 0 to hero for now. As already mentioned, fire rate is the most important stat after a crit, so fire rate frames like Gauss, Harrow, and Wisp will make this gun feel a lot better. Harrow in particular can make the Onos red crit quite easily. All 3 of these frames also grant reload speed buffs, which decreases the animation time of the Incarnon transformation. Another option is Volt, which can help with crit scaling and general quality of life via its speed and electric shield ability. Speed increases reload speed and Incarnon transformation, whereas electric shield adds electricity damage and doubles our modded critical multiplier. The electric damage is additive, but does not combine with our innate heat, granting us more scaling for Gun CO. Of course, there are standard damage buffs that can be acquired through the helmet system, like Roar, Eclipse, and Nourish. These buffs are nice, but totally unnecessary. If you intend to use Onos as your main damage dealing gun, you will need a primer. For that, I would recommend Bubonico, since it has an alt fire that has a large AoE, innate viral, and can be modded to have 176% status chance. The current build on screen can proc impact, radiation, magnetic, and viral status with the alt fire on a direct hit. If you use the primary fire a couple of times, you can proc IPS damage, as well as toxin on top of the other elemental combinations. The Arcane option is up to you, but I advise against Primary Deadhead and Merciless, since the gun won't be doing the killing. Instead, use utility arcanes like Primary Obstruct or Dexterity. Alright, that is pretty much all you need to know about the Onos. As for my thoughts, I think it's a fun and pretty strong weapon in its current iteration, despite the bugs. It can hit from multi-millions in raw damage, so it's just a pretty fun gun. However, the bugs need to be fixed for it to be considered a good Incarnon weapon. At the moment, it is competing against Latum and Vasto Prime Incarnon for my secondary weapon of choice. Latum is a weapon that can speak for itself, since it can perform ad clear and single target DPS while in its Incarnon form. Vasto Prime, although it can only do single target damage, does it so well that it can usually cover its weaknesses with another weapon. Onos can do ad clear and single target damage, but doesn't do either extremely well. It feels a bit unwieldy given the long charge time and low fire rate. While it is a good weapon, I would rather use the other options for the time being. However, the fun factor is there. I love the arm cannon aesthetic and hope that the fixes will address the issues. If you have any points that you would like to make, please leave them in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed the video. As always, thank you all for watching and happy farming.